My strength, it wasn't being the CMO. It's literally building friendships with people that can come add value to our organization and making as much noise as possible to make people care about this business.
My guest, Jake Karls, great title, the co-founder and chief Rainmaker of Midday Squares. Everybody knows him, everybody loves him, but this is a new brand on the market for most people. Tell me a little bit about the journey from, I know it was involved with your sister and some family, like from day one, we have an idea to, holy shit, what's going on now?
So we're sitting here today.
Yeah.
Well, it started actually 2 years even before we launched Midday Squares. My sister was making this chocolate snack for my brother-in-law because he loved like 2 p.m. eating, that slump, when everyone gets that 2 p.m. slump. And he wanted someone to pick him up. So she loved making food. She made him something that was like cleaner, healthier, little bit different than the current product that we have today. And they did it for 2 years straight, just like making it every day, giving it to friends, and everyone loved it. And then finally, they wanted to do a business together. And they're like, let's do this food business. Let's make this like the next biggest snacking business in the world. And they were delusional, obviously, and crazy.
So why do you get into the most competitive industry?
One of the most competitive, 40,000 products in a supermarket. Like, you're not guaranteed any space. You gotta make your way in. And they came to me, I'll never forget. It was like July of 2018. And they're like, do you want to join as the third founder of this business? And I was like, basically, fuck no. Because I was like, you guys don't stand a chance. Your product could be unbelievable, but how is someone even going to know what it is? Like, the world doesn't know. You don't have followers. You don't have attention. So they said, that's your job. Figure it out. You're coming on to make noise. They told me I'm a horrible operator and that they're good CEOs. So they said, we'll be CEOs. You build the brand, make noise and make people care. And I looked at them and I said, I think I have one more entrepreneurial route in me. And my ex-girlfriend at the time broke up with me out of nowhere. I still don't know why. But it was a good moment because I was heartbroken and I felt really like sad and lonely. So I was like, I need someone to keep me busy. And my business just shut from my previous business. So I joined them. It was August 4th, 2018. And my pitch to them was simple. It was, we're going to blow this business up. And the only way that we're going to do it is if we document and share everything on social media.
I heard that, and this is interesting, but your first couple hires were videographers.
Yeah, instead of food scientists, right? So why I said that was because we live in a world that's all about attention. And if you can't get attention, you're screwed as a business, as an individual. And at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you have. It's about how can you get people to care, make them care about what you're doing. So I said to my partners who are introverts, I'm an extrovert, as you could see. I said, let's storytell. We're going to show therapy. We're going to show the breakdowns. We're going to show milestones. We're going to show the good and the bad and the ugly. And they're like, no, that's weird. I'm like, no, we need people to opt in and want to feel part of what we're doing. And what that did was it created so much emotional connection that when we got into our first grocery store or our first supermarket, consumers went running looking for our products with antennas on because they were like, I feel like I love that company because they're my friends. And that's what we did. We acted like a boy or a girl band, like Spice Girls or Backstreet Boys. But instead of selling the records, we were just selling chocolate. But the idea was we were telling the story of how the band works, how the band gets together, how we create the music.
Right.
But that was this whole story. It wasn't about the chocolate bar with the protein, the fiber. 7 years later, we built our own manufacturing plant in Montreal that makes about 135,000 of them a day to 150, which every single day, which is crazy. We sell in 10,000 stores across North America, 65% in the United States, 35% here in Canada. We make everything in Canada. And most importantly, we've sold over 65 million of these little squares, which is more than the amount of people in Canada.
So the product has to be amazing, of course, and
Product
great.
market fit, yeah.
But with your approach and your ethos to building this brand, you could have substituted anything in there. It's not about the product.
I think that's what brands need to get better at is, yes, once you have product market fit, which is probably the most important thing for any business. If you don't have that, you can't go anywhere because there won't be a repurchase. But once you have product market fit, the next big thing is, how do you get people to care about what you're doing? How do you get them into your community? If you don't know what we are, you're going to randomly stumble upon it in a store that has 40,000. It's too hard, right? It's almost impossible. The odds are stacked against you. And I always say, 20 years ago, if I was a business and I had money, you could force people to pay attention. Billboards, TV ads, Super Bowl commercials, all that stuff. Yeah. Today, because of the internet and social media, attention is democratized to the consumer. Yeah. They have to choose who they're paying attention to. They could unsubscribe, they could block you, delete you, change the channel. So if you don't make them care or doesn't relate to their life or connect, you're not getting their attention.
Totally. What are you making or trying to make people care about? Are there like some central themes, obviously beyond the product?
So for us, product obviously is critical, but I think secondary was the underdog story. It was like, can these three average, crazy, delusional, weird people, family, I guess, build the next biggest chocolate snack company. That big question mark was like the odds are stacked 99% against them, but they slowly start overcoming. So you start to care about the journey cheering us on. When we got into Costco, you're like, yeah, like that's a huge moment. But what ended up happening now is now that we're scaled a little bit in multiple countries and we're building, we now have to figure out what our next identity is. It's not the in the condo hand making bars anymore, because now we have a fully automated factory. So how do we now tell the story of the next road, the road to a billion one day, a value, you know? So for us, the way we're doing is the identity we want to create is this is a bold brand. This is an unapologetically authentic brand. And that's the feeling we want. We don't want it to be about a chocolate bar, but we want it to be about this brand just makes me feel bold and gives me permission to be myself.
And this is a theme that can be timeless, you know, whereas obviously the underdog story only plays when you are the underdog.
Exactly.
But as you're becoming not the underdog anymore, this becomes something.
We didn't think that through at the beginning. It was just underdog. Let's see how long it goes. And then we start to notice that people in the middle of, you know, upstate New York or Florida didn't know who we were. They were seeing this content of us, like three people that they don't even know, like, who the hell are these people? But the people in Montreal that have been supporting us for 6-7 years, they love that story because they've been watching it from the condo kitchen. So we needed to figure out, can we do big campaigns that still have the same core values, which is just being ourselves authentically, but on a bigger theme or on a more, like, let's call it relatable thing overall to everyone.
Well, it's working because what I've noticed is there is a visceral reaction to your brand, because I tell people, you know, I'm having Jake on the show and they're like, what? Like, fuck yeah. And so it's like, there's a difference between like, yeah, I like that brand versus like, I'm going to Costco to see if they're on the shelf yet.
Which is cool. And I think that I always bring up this great story is like, the moment you get people to care about what you're doing, they're not just buying your product. They're
it's
going
like part of their brand.
Yes, they're going and they're buying it and then they're telling people. They're going to their dinner table, like, you got to try this product. You wouldn't believe what this brand has done. And they're becoming what I call sneezers. They sneeze it out to other people. So if you invest in getting those people excited with your content, with your story, how you make people feel, your values, then that's going to turn into serious compounded, like exponential growth, because they're out there fighting for you all over the world. And that's how we've gone into retailers. That's how we've gotten investment from people. And that's how we've gotten journalists to be interested in us, because friends of theirs have told them, you got to see this brand. So I think brands need to get to that. And it's like, don't be so surface level. Go deep and don't look at views as a thing. We get a lot of views and that's fine, but we don't look at our KPI as how many views did we get? It's, did we make people feel something? Was there an emotion in the content? And do we even enjoy the content ourselves?
So you're saying that when your consumer base, your customer base, when they are the carriers of the message on your behalf, it's way more impactful.
Because look, if you were to tell me about your podcast yourself, like, that's great. Like, I respect you and I like you. But if I didn't even know you, let's say, and I'd be like, he's just telling me about himself. But what if someone said, I was listening to that podcast in the car and this guy was spewing such great things of just like learnings and this, and I'd be like, wait, I want to check this guy out. So you have your base that goes out and does it for you, and they trust that. It's hard to trust someone unless you get to know them. So friends are a lot more trustworthy. So I'd say make friends of your brand, make fans, don't build customers. Forget about the transaction. Focus on the emotionality in the relationship.
Rewinding a bit to when your sisters had asked to join on, and you maybe hummed and hawed and said it's never going to work. But then at some moment you said, I got one more in me. It feels to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels that you either need to go 100 or not at all. So where does that fire come from? And you're super active. And
I was insecure growing up. I didn't do well in school. So for me, my best friends are brilliant. They're academic successes. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're CPAs. Some of them are, masters, PhDs. And I was always the one that was on the other side of the spectrum in terms of like more failure, close to failure. And I always felt embarrassed about it, that I couldn't articulate messages, that I couldn't, pronounce words. And I was always like, not spelling things right. So I always just like feared speaking, or I feared, being myself in terms of in smart environments, traditional corporate environments. So for that, my whole life, that drove me to like have this like anxiety and fear where it actually avoided me from doing things. Like I didn't believe truly in myself. And I'll never forget, after getting rejected from 36 different jobs in investment banking, financial modeling, insurance, I decided to be an actuary to prove to people that I was smart, even though I did horrible on it. And didn't even complete it. But when I felt devastated, I was like, I just tried to be somebody else and I couldn't even get the job in that. I worked so hard to be that. And that was the moment I realized, like, I got to learn who Jake is. What is my superpower? What are my skills? And I started to just build my own businesses and try things. And I failed. And then I got back up. And then I started to learn that I'm a good storyteller. I'm actually good at making people part of something. And then as I started getting that momentum, slow compounded momentum led to more conviction. That conviction led me to feel comfortable articulating, comfortable speaking, comfortable coming on podcasts. And then now it's second nature to me. But I always had that fire from an insecurity early on of not feeling smart and feeling like an outlier in a quotation negative way. It was actually a good thing.
Totally.
And it was who I was, right? So like, instead of avoiding it and being embarrassed about it, I wish I was more proud about it. And I actually had the conviction, because it's not all about school. And I respect school a lot, by the way. There's amazing things that come from school, and I did graduate university. But I think that there's not just that. And there's some people that don't thrive in those environments, and some people that thrive in different environments. And we got to embrace those as well. And we got to give them the best chance at winning as well. There's not just one path.
Do you feel any responsibility to leverage your platform to use?
So what I do now is I go to like universities and like, I go give guest lectures on like storytelling and like, instilling authenticity into the marketing. And what I do is I share my journey of the unaverage path I took from failure to success. And like, it wasn't supposed to build a business. It wasn't working out for me typically. And I still made it because I believed, and I actually took my own path. So if I could show the next generation that you can win by being you in whatever you do, whether it's corporate, whether it's becoming a doctor, whether it's, starting your own business, whether it's becoming a plumber, it doesn't make a difference. If you are yourself and you are playing that game, you are the number one in the world. And I hid that for so long because I was scared that I wasn't winning the game that most of other people were playing. So I try to tell that now.
That's amazing. And we all appreciate that, right? Because
I hope
sometimes it's a lot easier to make these big decisions and how you're going to behave and act and believe about yourself when someone else is given license to do that.
And like I've been even on this journey of Midday Squares, I had depressive states multiple times. I've been through some of my lowest moments, burnouts, and I almost quit the business. I had to take 40 days off because I had no control of my brain and my life. Like I was disaster. And this is like, well, the business was doing well because I lost my identity throughout it. Sometimes you get caught in the wrong things. And as soon as you veer off from being you and you start to lean into things that aren't even true to who you are, it starts to eat you slowly. And then it could actually have major effects. So from my whole mission is like, yes, I want to build $1 billion chocolate bar company. And that's great. That's one thing. But the real one is to spread the energy that I'm trying to spread of being positive, of being yourself, of showing the world that you are your greatest power, and show that every day because it will reward you over time if you stay consistent. Now, don't just go once and then pull back because you failed. You got to get back up. It's not about, I always say, an average decision in life, playing it safe, will lead to an average outcome. It can't guarantee success. But an unaverage decision will always lead to an unaverage outcome because you being you, no one in the world is that. So when you make those decisions based on that, it's got to be an outlier. Wouldn't you rather be an outlier in terms of good or bad? You learn from the bad and you win from the big.
You made a LinkedIn post recently on this topic where, kind of thrust or self-put into the role of CMO and maybe everything that what a CMO is supposed to be. And you felt this like chemical imbalance at some point, and then you built the role around you.
Yeah. Well, I was the third co-founder in this business. So we each had a third of the business, and my partners went as co-CEOs because they're amazing operators. They still are co-CEOs and they're still amazing operators. So I felt that I needed that CMO role. I was doing marketing, I was doing storytelling. So I needed that big role, that big name that I respect CMOs. They're brilliant. They're very smart people and they have a very hard job. So I took it as like an ego thing, not because I actually wanted to do that. And as I went into the role, the first couple months, it was carnage in the organization. I was doing a terrible job at managing. I was doing a terrible job with the organization. I was playing to a lot of my weaknesses instead of my strengths, which were make people feel something, make noise, and go out there and make friends. And I'll never forget in a therapy session, because my partners and I go to therapy together once every 10 days. We would talk about my role all the time. And then finally, it just became clear that this was not the role for me. And I had to step down. And I had to make that decision. My partners it supported the decision, obviously, because it was so obvious that it didn't fit. And I took the step back and I said, in my own company, I'm going to take a step back and be managed, because it's not about the title I have. It's about my most value I can give is when I'm playing to my superpower, my strengths. My strength, it wasn't being the CMO. It's literally building friendships with people that can come add value to our organization and making as much noise as possible to make people care about this business. So what I realized with my role was literally just a rainmaker. I was making it rain for the organization in every category That way my sales team had an easier job, my finance team had an easier job, my marketing team had an easier job, because guess what? They didn't have to go build relationships. I was just traveling and speaking and making noise and getting investors, getting media to cover us, getting, new team members, building relationships with our retail buyers. And that way, whenever I needed to pass my friendship on, they were already friends with me. I became the Rainmaker.
Everyone's job easier.
And then they'll call me and they'll be like, yo, we need a relationship at XYZ. Can you do that in the next 3 months? No problem. I'll do a special ops mission to just focus on that. I will fly where I have to go. I will do anything in my power to get the person's attention. And then once I have it, I will try to make a real friendship. And then when the friendship's at a level, I'll say, would you be willing to help us or work with us? And sometimes they'll say no, and that's okay. But if they say yes, I then pass it on. I do not work longer with that person. I just stay friends with that person. And that way it's built on actual true authenticity, not just, hey, I need you because you're going to, transact with us. Some do turn that way, and that's part of the game. But for me, my intention is like, we've met today, you and I hope we stay in touch. I hope when I come to your city or you come to my city, we grab coffee. And it doesn't have to be about business. It could just be about, we just spent an hour having a conversation together. We better have another one,
Man, that's I'm a huge believer and proponent in this concept of zone of genius and taking proactive steps to build that role around your zone of genius, ignoring your weaknesses, relying on strength partners. But you are exemplifying this in real time, right? And it's hard, it's shitty, and it takes a lot of ego or suppression of the ego, because I'm sure at some point you're like, stepping down from anything wasn't in your DNA.
I thought that my value wasn't there. I felt like I was not worth it to be part of like that team, like, because I was really not good. And it was killing me inside, man. Like my stomach felt like weird every day. I would feel like, and my partners never made me feel bad, by the way, but I would feel uncomfortable in big meetings because like I didn't have, and it was just like everything was collapsing and I was holding it all together. I was trying to like be tough, and inside I was failing. And then I realized I had to just let go. And letting go is actually sometimes a strength. Putting the bat down is sometimes straight. And I believe in swinging all the time, but but there's moments that putting the bat down is actually more powerful than swinging. So I don't know, that was one of those moments. And then that lesson, because of the success I had after that, I started to put that into more parts of my life. And right. I realized that your ego is a powerful source. It could actually do a lot of good for you. Yeah. But there's moments where it causes wreckage and carnage. And you got to be able to identify that and act on that really quickly.
Wow. I'm curious, because there's a lot of founders that get into business with family. Are you a crazy person if you work with family, or how have you figured it out? And how does this become maybe an advantage?
It's anyone working with family or anyone that wants to go work with family, just be very careful. And I'll tell you why. Partnering with family, you are risking the relationship. And this is not to be morbid or to be, a little bit pessimistic. But when you love somebody, that's way more important than your business. The relationship that you have that's built on love is something you can't buy in this world. You have to develop that. It has to be there. It takes a lot of work. Now, a partnership takes a lot of work just to protect the partnership. And if you don't protect it, and this pressure cooker of building a business, which is, again, all odds are stacked against you, it's not supposed to work. There's money now, there's tension, there's misalignment. If all that happens, your relationship could be gone forever. You could lose that sibling, that wife, that husband, that brother, that parent, because when you mix all those things into the pressure cooker, changes your environment, it changes everything. Sometimes people forget the family aspect. So when we started this business, we didn't partner because we're family. We actually partner because what they're good at, I'm not good at. What I'm great at, they're not good at. And when you put it together, it's a very strong tripod. Now, my business partner, Nick, my brother-in-law, suggested since day one, I'll never forget the first week, he said, we only do this business together if we commit to doing therapy once every 7 to 14 days, I think it was, every week or two, in good or bad times, both good or bad times, perpetual, forever. I looked at him and said, no, I'm not doing that. I don't need therapy. I was very naive at the time. And then what ended up happening was I said, okay, I'll do 6 sessions. After that, if I don't like it, I'm not doing it. I'm done. Fair. And then they signed an agreement. So I signed that agreement. Then they signed an agreement that they would put themselves on camera, which I told you at the beginning, storytelling was the forefront of the business. And then being introverts was scary. So we both did things that scared us and that were discomfort. We committed to them out of respect for the partnership. Yeah. And we even though we were nervous and didn't agree with necessarily them, we still gave it our 150% in it with respect. And both of those two things were the best investments Midday Squares ever made to date, other than innovation and our team that we've built. But those two have been very critical to why I'm with you today. And so when it comes back to partnership, protect it, because the odds are stacked against you. And if you look at the data out there, it's all out there publicly. A lot of businesses don't fail because of shit products. they actually fail because of founder conflicts, because the tension in partnership, and then they're gone. Best friends gone, family gone. Doesn't make a difference. But you see it all the time. The families break up, and it's so sad because it's about money and misalignment. And so just if you're listening, protect it. Go to a therapist, call a coach, call a friend that's doing it so they can have an outlet.
When you guys all got together, did you sit and mutually acknowledge the risk profile the risk of mixing those ingredients together, business partner and family?
100%. So I'll never forget my parents. So I moved back to my parents' house because when we started this business, 25, because I had to use all my money. So I moved back, and I'll never forget my brother-in-law came into the house because my dad was feeling uneasy about this. And he was feeling uneasy not because he wanted to have control of our lives, but because he was worried that my sister and I, or potentially their marriage, my sister and my brother-in-law, like them two, would explode. It would be done because business gets tough. And my brother-in-law had to come in and not pitch in a weird way, but it was like have a very honest, like heart-to-heart conversation with my parents, my dad and my mom, and say like, I promise you nothing else matters, not the business, but that we're family, or we're better than family when we leave this business. Because again, if we built $1 billion business and we hated each other, it wasn't worth it. And I actually mean that when I say this today on the camera. But if we built a sizable business, or even if we failed, but we still love each other, those are some of my best friends. And that's more worth it. I know it sounds crazy, but that's the truth. And I would just say, if you're listening to this, just take it. I'm not an expert or any advice. It's just what we're going through. And I've had so many friends call me that said they've lost their friends and family simply because of failed partnerships.
Okay, so let's get to the horizon of Midday Squares. That's
good stuff. The optimism. I'm very optimistic, by the way.
That's serious, though. Like, it's super appreciated because, we're humans and we go through the same shit.
All of us.
And hearing this makes it okay. For somebody.
It doesn't have to be an entrepreneur. It could be someone just in life. The partner you choose in life. Communication.
I love it, man. So when you close your eyes at night, you and the team, what comes into vivid clarity for you guys in terms of where are we going?
So we first call it the road to 100 million of revenue as a business. That's the initial phase of this business. So, we're on a 2-year game plan to get in there right now. Once we get there, we'll decide what's next in terms of what's the next horizon in terms of, is it a revenue goal? Is it an impact goal? What are the goals? We haven't decided that. But I think the overall vision of Midday Squares that we all are aligned on, our team and us, is that we want to be the most trusted afternoon snacking brand in the better for you indulgence space, period, globally. However long that takes, that could be a 30, 40, 50-year overnight success story. That doesn't mean we're not growing very fast. There's no time limit. And just the road to 100 had a time because that was part of a goal we put forward. But that's the vision. So we will do everything in reverse engineer to make that happen. And, right now, even in our category, in the space that we're in, we're actually, in Canada, we're leading. We're number 1 in our category. And in the US, we're number 3 or 4. So we got to catch back up, but we're getting there. We're climbing. Yeah, we just started there 3 years ago. It's 10 times the size of our countries, right? But what I could tell you is this. The moment that Midday Square stops being fun for my partners and I, we all agree that that's the end for us. And that's somebody else should take the business. So we're still having fun, no matter how much pain it is, no matter how much hardship. I can't tell you how many times I've cried myself to sleep, and my partners have, it's difficult manufacturing yourself, selling a chocolate bar, which is, even though it's a great product, it's still a commodity, and someone will always undercut you and do this. And storytelling and being a media brand, it's a lot of work. You see what goes on with your own life. The odds are not stacked for us. So we're still having fun, even with all those things. But until that changes, we're going to get there.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure, man. Privilege getting to know you and you spitting this truth and sharing this truth.
Unapologetic.
Yeah, hell yeah. Everyone, my guest, Jake Karls.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.